Hello, my friends. Welcome back to another Talent Talks podcast. I'm Scott Rivers, your host, and I'm looking forward to this show. This show gets me back to an area that I've got a passion for. It is the area of marketing. And today's guest is somebody who I think is going to bring just tremendous value to this based upon their experience in marketing, not just marketing, but demand marketing. Also demand marketing in the field of medical diagnostics and devices. Today's guest is Chris Walker. You'll find him at LinkedIn at Chris Walker. If you are on YouTube, you'll see his information right now on the screen. So Chris is the CEO at Refine Labs. He is a absolute entrepreneur in the area of marketing. And he gives us some amazing examples today to talk about some things that he has done in his past, which have been very successful. And I'm telling you, if you're in marketing in the area of diagnostics, genetics, device, you're going to want to listen to this show. And you might not like everything that Chris has to say about the industry and what he thinks needs to be changed. But I think that it's something that you definitely want to listen to. You can also find him at Refine Labs. That is his company. And you'll find here that they focus on demand generation within the businesses that they serve. Lastly, and I can't emphasize this enough, I think that you'll want to check out the podcast, State of Demand Gen, which Chris also talks through as part of the podcast. And we kind of walk through a lot of different areas where he's seeing success with this. So what I want to do is remind you that if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the podcast, whether you're doing this in YouTube. Go ahead and hit the like button. Go ahead and hit that bell if you'd like to. You'll get notified every time we post something. If you are getting this on Spotify, iTunes, or any other area or any other place that you get your podcast, please go ahead and subscribe to it. Give us some comments. Give us any feedback. You can always reach out to me directly, and I would like to get this information back. I want to know if we're providing value, and I want to know if this is useful today, because our goal with this podcast has always been to provide information that is helpful to those people in the commercial area of diagnostics, genetics, and devices. And so if you're finding this useful, please let me know, reach out to me directly. I look forward to that feedback. Without further ado, let's jump into the show and let's talk to my friend, Chris Walker. Guys, Chris Walker on the show today. Really excited to have him here. I know I use the word really way too often, but this is getting back to an area that I absolutely love. I've got an affinity for it. It is the area of marketing. And there's two things that I think are coming up right now post-COVID-19 that people need to be aware of. Number one, we need leaders more than ever. And number two, marketing is going to be more important today, I feel like, than it has been in the past. By far, the marketing piece of it's going to be super important. So Chris Walker is here with us today, and we're going to dig into marketing. Chris, welcome.
Scott, really happy to join you, man. It's funny you brought that up, because I have been saying that marketing is going to be more important in B2B companies that are typically sales-led since 2015.
Yeah.
And I've known it, and I've seen the impact of executing marketing well in a sales-led company over the past 5 years. And all this situation has done so far is just accelerate the pace of getting to where we're going to get anyway.
So what was giving that away? What were the indicators to you back in 2015 that made you say marketing is going to be the key?
Low rep productivity, longer sales cycles than they need to be, lower win rates, less efficient, continuously seeing less and less efficiency on SDR outbound, rising customer acquisition costs as you scale a sales channel. Like, those are the things. And that's on the business metric side. And then go and look at what customers want. Yeah. And so the fact that over this period of time, like, this has been happening for a long time, but definitely over the past decade, that buyers have way more control over their own buying process than ever before. They don't need you at the beginning, and companies are starting to see that as buyers have more control over the process, they need to adapt how they actually go to market.
Well, and a lot of that has to do with access to the internet, access to information. And in fact, I believe, and we'll talk about Jake a little bit here, listening to Jake, he's like 85% of the people don't even want to see you until they're ready to buy. So that in and of itself pushes everything back to marketing. How are they getting to learn about you, learn about your product, or how do they even know that they need your product, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
And the real key here is allowing them to learn about the product in the ways that they want. And so, like, there's a lot of traditional advertising that happens that is not the way that people want to learn. So that's one. And then the second thing is, like, a lot of companies will stuff people into demos or give people $250 gift cards to sit on demos, and they're there for the gift card. They're not there to learn about the product. They're not receptive. They don't feel the pain. And so I think when people are in a sales conversation and they're not ready, they actually don't receive the information that you're trying to give them.
Mm.
And so being able to do that in a way that aligns with how they want to buy, I think is one, just super buyer centric, and two, just like a smarter way to go to market.
Okay, so now we jump in, right? I'm ready for this. I like
Let's do
this.
it.
So the marketing side of this, right? They're looking at all of these things. They're continuing to throw out information. They're continuing to trying to get customers into what they're doing by throwing out gift cards or whatever it is. And this is probably not specific to what we know and love, the medical device and medical diagnostics business, but it's still happening. So what metric are they looking at that makes them think that this is working? I mean, is the 0.5% return that they're getting, is that the metric they like to see, or is it something else?
I've spent a lot of time in my career in med tech, and most recently a lot across a ton of different companies in B2B tech and SaaS. And so I think one of the key things that happens in that industry, and then we can get more deep into the medical side in that industry, that marketing and sales are so disconnected that marketing is optimizing for marketing metrics and not actually looking at what happens after that.
Yeah.
And so if marketing is trying to score on MQLs or demos sat, like, there's a lot of hacks that you can do to optimize for that metric that doesn't actually get you to the result that it was designed for. And so those are some of the things that I see.
Okay. So ultimately we've got to get to that ROI, which, when I was in marketing 100 years ago, one of the comments that I might have been guilty of saying is it's tough to really measure ROI on the marketing that you're putting out, especially in the medical industry. But today we have to measure that ROI. So how do we start to figure that out if we're talking about selling into hospitals and what we're trying to push out from marketing, or do we just blow it all up and say our marketing is different today? This is how we measure ROI.
It's a really interesting question. I learned this very well from 2016 to 2018. I built a demand function inside of a $30 million venture funded medtech fast growing company from the ground up, and learned a couple of key things. One is that there's a simple way to quantify the impact of marketing, knowing that you're going to miss some things and there's other benefits inside of it that you will never be able to capture. And so what I would do is, it was just very black and white on our website. There's a button that says, hey, get a demo with a sales rep or whatever it is. And anyone that comes through a website conversion, we count to a marketing. I actually consider it inbound, not marketing. I look at it from the buyer's perspective versus who's taking credit for it internally.
Okay.
So is the buyer coming to us, or are we going to them? And the goal is that more people are coming to us over time. More people are coming to us. They're converting into sales opportunities. They are going through the funnel. When you're a Medtronic in the world, you have a lot of that.
Yeah.
But when you are the $25 million disruptive technology that's trying to displace a subsidiary of one of those companies, it's very hard. And so being able to continuously drive more people to you through educating and informing them about the benefits of your product, the clinical data, the case studies, the references, all those different things, allows more people to be open to learning more about what you do.
Yeah, which leads me, I guess, to my next question, which is, you mentioned inbound, not necessarily marketing. And I was going to ask you, is inbound dead? Is that inbound strategy, the quote unquote HubSpot, going out, pushing out content, therefore bringing in your inbound, is that still alive and does it work?
I think it really depends on the definition, and I don't define inbound anywhere near how most people would. And so, like I said, I frame it up in the buyer's perspective. And so, is the buyer coming to us? And it doesn't matter what we're doing in order to achieve that outcome, right? And so, like, a lot of people will be like, "Yo, you're running ads; it's outbound marketing," and it's like, I don't know. I am driving buyers inbound to us, and I'll take whatever means is the most effective way to do that at scale in order to do it. And so, Is the idea of writing a million blogs and gating ebooks and putting people through nurture sequences dead? I'm not going to call it dead, but I'll say it's way less effective than it was in 2009.
Sure.
And so like I choose to do the things that are most effective at the time and completely just throw away the things that have become less effective that most people still do. Right. And so I spend no time trying to gate ebooks and put people in nurtures, because I did that in 2016 for that med tech company.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched how much time I spent on it and how much money I spent getting people to ebooks to download them and how they went through those sequences and how many people bought stuff. And I was like, this is a waste of time.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've done the same thing. Since 2000, even back 2005 to 2000 and probably 10, 12, we were putting together concept books, ebooks, even white papers for that matter, and
Yep.
getting people into those nurturing campaigns. And I could probably count on one hand the number of times that those converted to, long-term clients, long-term deals. So
people will, the really interesting thing on this one is that if you use a tool like HubSpot or anything like that, that you can, once you have them in that sequence, you can claim that it made an impact forever because you can track it. And so people spend a lot of time doing the things that they can measure so that they can justify their activities. And I just forego those things and focus on revenue.
Right. So John Smith came in as a client today, and you know what? I'm in marketing. I saw he downloaded the ebook 4 years ago. We're taking credit.
Yep.
Right? It's my credit.
First touch attribution. We love it.
Well, it does help for sure. Let's jump into some specifics if we could. Let's look at medical companies today, right? Your salespeople, and this is why I think marketing is going to be infinitely more important. Your salespeople are stuck. They kind of got their hands tied right now. They're not walking into the accounts. They're not getting that face-to-face time with their customers. And so that relationship sale that was happening on a regular basis, maybe it's still happening, but it's not happening as much as it was. So the marketing piece is what's going to ultimately drive people, I think, towards new purchases, new products, new information. What do companies today need to be doing different than they did 2 years ago or even in January?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite funny because all of those companies have built their go-to-market strategies around field sales organizations and events.
Right.
And both of those things can't happen right now and for the foreseeable future are not going to be. And so unless you have a product that has more demand because of the current situation, you're in trouble. Like you have to, and it's not like you just, snap your fingers and you're like, yeah, we have a well-running marketing engine right now. It takes a lot of testing, a lot of energy, a lot of talent, a lot of time to build something that's actually effective. And so, I believe that companies will look back, and the ones that respond well and actually start building these things and taking them seriously will consider this a positive thing for their business when they look back in 5 years. But right now, for those that didn't spend the last 5 years trying to figure this out, I think they're going to be really struggling.
So what's step one?
This is kind of an interesting one. It's maybe not what I would normally suggest, but for me, step one, and this is particularly pertinent for medical device companies, is to find a true demand marketer, a true demand leader that can execute a strategy. And you know what? I know in all of your job descriptions that it says must have 5 years of FDA regulated medical device experience, and you're not going to find that person there. And so you're going to have to look in other industries. I think it's a really interesting, if you really dive deep into this one, about how medical companies require that type of experience for almost anyone except for an entry-level sales role.
Right.
That the amount of homogenous thinking inside of this industry, because they refuse to let other people in to expose new innovations, is fascinating to me. Like, I would be finding people that have experience in e-commerce and demand and virtual events and building out like media executions, like all those different things are not core competencies in a majority of medical device companies.
Right. So start looking for those things that are going to help you in the future. Is it too late right now, or are there some tactics? Because here's what I'm thinking. Tactically, what I would be doing is figuring out ways to get subject matter experts on video, subject matter experts from my company in LinkedIn. I'd be walking up to them with a phone, if at all possible, and saying, hey, tell me about this, and then trying to capture that. Is that a tactic? Does it work? Or yeah, we're not yet.
Yeah, I mean, first off, it's never too late to get started on this stuff, right? And yes, if there's like the most the simplest thing that you could do right now is to pull information out of your subject matter experts and publish it on the internet. The challenge is that a lot of companies don't know how to distribute content effectively. And so all you're going to be doing is you're going to take that phone video, you're going to post it on LinkedIn to your company page that has 300 followers and get 6 views from people that are employees of your company and have absolutely no impact. And so one of the like more high level points here is that it's not only about the content, it's about how you distribute the content. And most companies don't know how to distribute it unless they're focused on SEO. And SEO is a one distribution channel. SEO is not a content strategy. Search is a distribution channel of content. And so there are plenty of other mediums that you can distribute the content in. You could send it via an email. You could put it on LinkedIn. You could run ads on Facebook to it. You could have someone present it at a conference in person. You could send something in the mail. Like those are all the different ways that you could communicate the message. And I just don't think that companies are especially in med tech, aside from the field sales rep delivering the information in person,
Right.
or someone paying $50,000 to host a symposium at a conference for their SME to present at, or to have one of their, people on their clinical advisory board present how they use their product. Like I don't see a ton of other ways companies know how to distribute content in this industry.
Yeah, we see a lot of webinars. Right. We see webinars going off all the time, and I always like to jump in there and see how many people actually show up. And it's always the sales representatives from the company. It's always the other marketing people from the company. But very, very rarely do you get that true influx of potential customers or customers.
You know why?
Like that. No, but you're going to tell me.
Because it's a back end sales pitch. There's never actually any value delivered. No clinician actually wants to attend that webinar. The key is to focus on what the people that you're after want. And oftentimes that has nothing to do with your product. Maybe occasionally you need to present on a new piece of clinical data that impacts one product over the other, or one modality over the other. There are certain ways to weave in what you do, but the key is to focus on them. And I think a lot of companies are, especially in this industry, are so much in sales mode that they would never do a webinar for ER physicians about gunshot wounds when they're selling a diagnostic product for the ER. They would never produce content that has that doesn't have a direct tie to a sale of their product, and I think that is short-sighted.
I would agree. I think we're starting to see more of it. I think people are catching on, and I think that we're going to see more and more as time goes on. I mean, of the people that we've had on this show, every single one of them have mentioned that, not from a company standpoint, but from a personal standpoint. You need to be putting out information that is valuable to those people that are listening to you. It can't all be sales. And I think what we see a lot of times with companies especially is only thing that they post, and let's just go to LinkedIn, okay? Mm-hmm. The only thing they post on LinkedIn is information about their product, information about a service they provide. It's sales. Mm-hmm. And the only people that like it are the people from the company who mm-hmm. click on like because they want their manager to see that they liked it. Mm-hmm. How do we fix that?
Yeah, I mean, let's go back to the webinar real quick because there's something else I need to get in. There's 2 things on the webinar. The first one is that you need to earn the trust of someone to actually show up. Okay. And that means producing content in a way that helps them so that you have the trust so that they actually want to come to your webinar and they know that it's going to be valuable. That requires producing content in other channels first.
Right.
The second thing is to be disciplined about not having a sales cadence following after them. Nobody that attends your webinar that then gets 6 calls from your sales rep wants to come to your next webinar.
Yeah. Yeah. But I got to justify it, right? I've got to justify the reason I did it, Chris. So how am I going to do that if my sales reps aren't immediately following up, 10 minutes after they get off of that call?
The sales reps don't want to follow up with these people either. They know that those people don't want to talk to them. Like go and ask. Like when I worked at these companies, I built relationships with sales reps and I asked them. And I would send them leads from different sources and I would understand what they told me. I would also call the leads myself. And so And the collective feedback, anyone, you can go and do this yourself for anyone listening. You can ask your sales reps, what do you think of trade show leads? They're going to say they suck. Unless I met them myself, I don't want to talk to them. Webinar leads, if you send them to me, I'm still not going to follow up. And that's the feedback. And I would do the same thing about if they ask for a demo, if they ask for a quote, if they downloaded this white paper, if they, visited our website and I looked up their information and sent them along without any intent. Like, those are some things that I would do and I would learn. And basically what I learned is your sales reps, especially in this industry, don't want to talk to people unless they said, I want to talk to your sales rep. Which is another way to say, just be buyer-centric. Okay. And in your marketing, it forces you to have a lot of discipline to get someone to the point where they actually want to talk to your sales rep.
So now we're pulling it back to the
entire marketing strategy changes a ton if you need that, if that becomes your endpoint.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you again, how do we do that? I mean, just come on, high level, throw this at everyone listening here, because they're all going to call you anyway and say, hey, we need you to figure this out for us. So come in and let's talk about it. But Chris, let's say we know we have to get buyer-centric. We know we have to get the potential customer to say, I want to speak to a salesperson about this, which means that they've already learned a truckload of information about your product, everyone else's product. How do we get them there? What's the roadmap?
Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of different things that you can do. I'll throw out a couple ideas straight away.
Good.
Most of these companies will have dozens of clinical specialists that are typically are exactly like your buyer, right? Like, you're selling to ER nurses, like, you probably have clinical specialists that have the same credentials as them and know them well. And I would start to have those types of people. You can call them an SME. Start to have those types of people creating content for those people. And I wouldn't just be putting it out on the LinkedIn company page. I would have those people putting it out across all their LinkedIns. And there's a lot more underneath the LinkedIn strategy in order for it to get to work. Like I said, distribution, like just posting content to your current follower base may not be enough. That's one. I would absolutely create a podcast and I would interview the expert at your top 50 accounts that both customers and non-customers, however you want to do it. But I would interview those people and I would create a podcast and I would publish 5 episodes a week. And people that are listening to this think it's crazy that they would publish 5 episodes of a podcast a week. I do it myself. I publish somewhere between 3 and 5 episodes a week. Have gone from 0 to 3,000 subscribers in the past 6 months since quarantine happened, when I got focused on this. And the impact is amazing. Almost, I would say 50% of my sales conversations start with, I was listening to your podcast and so that would be another tactical one. The next one that I think is super interesting, this is going to have to be for a company that has some pretty serious ambitions, would be to think about the conference where your most expensive booth happens. So everyone can think about that conference.
Sure.
Okay, let's think about it. And we're going to, we set all of our sales directors show up. Our VP of sales is there. We have 10 sales reps, 10 clinical specialists, everyone from marketing. There's 50 people there from our company. We're building a $100,000 booth. We're doing some event. Everyone knows what that conference is for them. And then think about, what are all the sessions that are happening at that conference? Who's speaking at them? What are they talking about? Who are the people that are attending? And start to build a track of, if we were going to compete with that event in a virtual standpoint, who would we have speaking? What would be the tracks? How would we get people there? And I've been saying this for 5 years. I think that Medtronic should be competing with all of the trade shows instead of paying them $250,000 to put a booth there for 3 days.
Yeah, my friends at AACC just hung up on us, but that's all right. That's okay. We're going to keep going anyway. And you're right.
And that's a virtual event. And if you promote it well, you could have somewhere between 2,500 and 10,000 of your target, either decision makers, influencers, or other people in your market there, exposed to your brand and all the content. Then you have all of the content afterwards.
Right.
And then you can use every single track as a different podcast episode. And you can cut up all the different webinars and put it on LinkedIn. And like, for the company that's not, throwing $7 million a year on trade show booths in the trash, like, you could take that money and do that, and it would cost you way less and it would have way more impact.
Yeah. Huge impact. All right, Chris. So this is, For everyone listening, this is why I reached out to Chris in the first place. I tell you, and Chris, we talked about this earlier. When I first started listening to your information, I think it was you were on with somebody, maybe it was Jake Dunlap, and I first started hearing you guys jump on, and both of you are pretty low key when you start, right? It's kind of like, hey, how you doing? I'm doing okay. Where are you staying now? I'm in Boston. You just moved, right? Yeah, I just moved. And then before that video was over, I'm like, shit, these guys just dropped so much gold in what they just put out for the marketing piece that, this alone should be worth a high price for admission. So guys, you just heard it here. I think what you just said was absolute gold. And I think more people should be doing that.
And anyone listening to this can do it. There's a couple key things. The first one is to commit to the strategy. So most people don't do this because they are not committed to it. And if you post one podcast episode per month, you're not going to get any traction and it's not going to have any results, and you might as well not do it. And so the first one is to commit to it. The second one is to set expectations and get buy-in inside of your organization about what you're trying to do and position it in a way that executives buy into it. And the third one is get it done. And so I think that a lot of these initiatives inside of these types of companies fail because it's really hard to do. It's also hard to measure.
Yeah, it is difficult. And I'm not even talking about putting together the virtual shows or the actual shows, if you could do that live.
Mm-hmm.
Even putting podcasts together, it's not easy. And I think so many people stop because it's hard. They stop before they could actually get going with it. And all you got to do is get moving. And then once you get moving, it starts rolling. And like you're doing now, it just builds more and more momentum until you get to the point where you've got a show or a product, if you will, that continues to grow just by you continuing to do the work, if that makes sense.
The next thing that I think people should consider is, and I don't care if you do it on Facebook or LinkedIn. A lot of people are like, oh, Facebook's not for business professionals. We would never advertise there. I've done it for the past 5 years, and I've targeted ER physicians, respiratory therapists, ER nurses, ICU intensivists, ophthalmologists, optometrists. It works. And so whatever one you want to do, if you're against Facebook for whatever reason, you can do it on LinkedIn. It's just going to be way more expensive. And I would start to produce content, and I would get it to them by paying to distribute it on one of those channels. And that would work. And it would be way more cost effective than whatever's happening in there today. I know that for sure.
But Chris, a key to that, whether it's LinkedIn or Facebook, probably Facebook more so, you need to create multiple pieces of that content. It's got to be very specific to your audience, correct?
Sure. I mean, I'll give you an example that did not need to be specific to anyone really. And so, we 3 years go on and we have a major clinical trial that is published in a very reputable journal about how our product is better than the product that's being used right now, has the same clinical outcomes with way less side effects. And that was news. And you know what a normal company would do? They would wait for the next year of the trade show to happen, and they would put on a symposium and 100 people would show up.
Right.
Or they would wait for someone to find it in the journal that they never read. Or they would wait for someone that knows them to maybe tell them about it, or wait for their sales rep to show up and try and give them the paper. And those are the ways that people would distribute that information. You know what I did? I wrote, or they'll put a press release up on the wire that never gets picked up and nobody reads.
Well,
those are the things that people
Chris,
will
it got picked up because they've got the metrics to show it got picked up by 200 media outlets because that's what they paid for, right? So it got, actually, you know what, Chris, it didn't. It got 270 media outlets. They only paid for 200. It was a win.
And you know what I did? I took almost the exact same press release that was on our news site that nobody read, and I rewrote it in language that was focused on our buyers, not like some PR'd version for investors and the media. I wrote it for the buyers about what it means for them in 4 paragraphs, and I put it on our blog, and I ran $50,000 in Facebook ads to all of the people inside of the US that would need to know about it, and drove dramatic impact and awareness about that clinical trial. And people just And that was probably the best $50,000 that company ever spent.
How much pushback did you get before actually implementing it?
When the CMO and the CFO and the CEO saw that we were getting people in our target market to read that piece of content for 14 cents, not a lot of pushback.
Yeah, that changed everything. That's cool. So I don't think people think of Facebook as much anymore. I think that everyone is really trying to focus and target on LinkedIn.
Yeah, there's a dramatic opportunity in Facebook. We work with 20 different software as a service companies, some of them which we put $100,000 a month through Facebook and get great results.
Wow.
And so, yes, there are certain instances for medical companies, you'll be able to get to the exact people based on field of study or job title or anything like that, and you'll be able to get them on Facebook and Instagram. The 35-year-old ER nurse in Orange County lives on Instagram. So figure out how to get to her there if that's who you're selling to,
Of
right?
course.
Like she's probably not on LinkedIn.
Now, how
And
about
so just
TikTok,
because
Chris?
you think that LinkedIn is a business platform, like your customers are somewhere else probably.
Right. Now, how about TikTok? Anything on TikTok?
I don't spend a ton of time on TikTok. I understand there's a huge opportunity there. I am not going to weigh in and pretend like I know, but what I do know, ton of organic reach, inexpensive ads. I don't even think you need the ads right now, but you could use them. And it will age up as long as it can make it there, but it'll just be like Instagram. Instagram was teenagers and people like that, and
Right.
now it's 30 to 50-year-old people live on Instagram, and so
Yeah. I hear other people
the
talking in our
dynamics will
space
change.
about it, about TikTok. And I don't think it's there for the medical community. And I think there's too much trash on it, to be honest with you, for people to be willing to invest the money. But, I guess we'll find
Yeah,
out over time.
yeah, there are just enough. I mean, for the medical community, I think there are enough better places to be right now. But it's you know, if you're a $5 million or $5 billion organization, like you don't think you could put one employee to just understand what TikTok is about?
Right.
Like I just don't understand. Like in 2 years, it could be where if you're targeting nurses, it could be where all of them are, and you're not going to spend a single minute of time trying to figure it out of all of the different inefficiencies of overhead expenses that you carry to have one employee just like learn it. That's I find fascinating.
Yeah. Okay. Chris, let me ask you, what is and we haven't really gone into this, probably should have done it at the beginning. What is your background? What got you to where you are today? Obviously, you are considered a marketing guru in this era right now. I see you everywhere on LinkedIn, but tell us about what happened before you got to where you are today.
Yeah, so relevant to some of the people here, I studied biomedical engineering about 10 years ago. Graduated with that degree, thought I was going to make electronic medical devices, diagnostics, or different things like that. Worked for 6 months in engineering, realized that it wasn't that cool. Moved into upstream product management, started speccing products, had built a couple medical apps during that time, and then moved into a venture funded medical device company in a full downstream demand gen role for 2 years. Really honed my skills there, studied how that type of company made investments, studied how they decided to allocate their commercial budget, studied how they made decisions on how much money to spend on their trade show booths. And it was all political. It was based on how the CEO would feel about the huge booth inside there that they could walk up to and have a couple customers show up at, not based on logic. And then you go and you're like, hey, can I have $1,000 a month to run Facebook ads? I think we can really get to our people. And they're like, no, because it's just their opinion. And so anyway, I built the engine there from a company that was doing 0% inbound, and their marketing team was focused on sales enablement and trade show booths. It was essentially all them and product strategy. By the way, I don't want to discount that from marketing, but if you split out like strategic and demand, like I covered the full demand inside of that company. Everything from like community management, building out social channels, integrating marketing automation with Salesforce, creating a content strategy, a creative strategy, building the website, getting people to the website, customer research, putting on a podcast and a video podcast with medical, experts. And so like I did all of those things and I learned so much. And now, and then I left that company. I moved out in the world and I was like, wow, what I did there was special.
Mm.
Like now I go and look at 20 other companies and they're all making the same mistakes that I just figured out how to solve. And then from there, I decided to start this business. And was it initially focused on medical devices. So like, wow, this market needs this so much. Like they're doing all these things, and there's such a better way to do it right now. And I came to the realization after 6 months that these people just don't want what I'm pushing. They're like, there's too much politics and old thinking inside of it. And so like I don't focus. I mean, could I help those companies? For sure. Do I focus on trying to convince them to do something that they'll never do? No, I don't. I focus on the people that want to buy what I'm selling, and we get great results for those types of companies.
So most of what you're doing now is in the area of tech or software as a service. Is that more accurate? Of those are the companies that are like, yeah, we like this. This will work.
Tech SaaS believes in it. And the key interesting thing is that the business models of these two companies are not different. They're not that different. Like if you look at a capital consumable sale in medical device versus a recurring revenue model SaaS company, they both have big implementations typically. There's a capital expense up front. There's a recurring revenue model behind it based on usage and success of the product. The business models are not that much different. Just how they deliver between the two are incredibly different. And so, like, I don't think a lot of medical device companies know about what their customer acquisition cost is. I know the one that I worked for didn't, which is it just blows my mind how you're building a company and you have 100 sales reps around the country and you don't know how much it costs you to acquire a new customer. And what you're doing is you're doing a land and expand play.
Yes.
And you continue to grow. You're continuing to grow your revenue based on expansion revenue, and let alone you have 40 sales reps that aren't getting into new accounts, which is their job. And so that's I found that incredibly interesting as I studied it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So, Chris, more about you. Obviously, you know your craft very well. What do you do to stay sharp? What are the things that you listen to? Who do you read or listen to make sure that you're continuing to sharpen the sword?
Yeah, I mean, the things that I do, I have oversight into 18 Salesforce instances and ad accounts for all of our customers. And so I'm in there continuously testing, learning, looking at data, understanding when you do this, what happens across them. How does it impact across different costs of product, target markets, channels, all those different things. I work full time on two of our most important accounts. And so I'm running demand gen for two sophisticated software as a service organizations. And so I stay sharp that way. I stay sharp by being on podcasts like this and having questions that I don't expect, and having to figure out how to answer them. And the last one that's super interesting is it was 2 hours on Tuesday, every Tuesday night for the past 6 months. I have a live Q&A that happens at 7:30 p.m. Eastern over Zoom. At this point, close to 75 marketers show up every week, and ask me questions really specific about what's going on in their business. And I need to continuously demonstrate expertise and experience that way. And so that's how I stay sharp. I honestly don't consume a ton of marketing content anymore.
Yeah, makes sense.
I read a lot on LinkedIn. I use it. I use it as insights, to understand what's going on. But like I use LinkedIn a lot. Like there's several posts that I post that are provocative, where I get a ton of feedback. When you get 100 comments from people and understand what they're saying, like that's how I learn. Sure. I understand how people think.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, I've watched a lot of your content and consumed a lot of your content on LinkedIn, and there's some of them where I kind of turn my head. I'm like, I don't know that I understand what he just asked or said. And I'm sure it was over my head. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm not commenting on that. I'm going to wait and see what someone else has to say about it first. As far as, your company, I know that you're growing your organization constantly. One of the things that we're focused on is talent. And I always like to find out what it is that people look for when they are interviewing talent. Do you have a specific way that you determine whether or not someone's a fit for your company? And then ultimately, what do you hire for? What is that one thing that if they've got this is the it for my organization, what do you hire for?
Yeah, so it really depends on the role. So it depends on the role from a technical skill standpoint, but the core things that I'm looking for in general are they a good person? Do I trust them? A key factor about working in our organization is are they entrepreneurial? I'm not looking for people that just want to go about their day right now. I think something that's unique is that I hire people that have the same profile of what our customers need. And so it's very unique in the type of business that I'm in, that I go out and I pay top dollar to have directors of demand generation that companies hire us to use. And my quote unquote competitors will hire someone that's $60K to run ads and have no clue what's going on. It's inside of that company. All the people that I hire have worked inside of the companies that my clients work in. So those are some of the things that I look at. It's technical skills, and do they have the intangibles that they would need to be successful inside of our company?
Yeah. Awesome. Tell us where people can find out more about you. What's the best way to reach out to you?
So
and also,
LinkedIn, Chris.
And I'm sorry, Chris, one other thing, what programs do you have? Projects do you have? Anything that people should know about who are listening to this?
Yeah. So LinkedIn's the best way to catch me. I publish content on there almost every day. LinkedIn, Chris Walker. And then the project that has been, I have a lot of projects going on, but the one that's by far had the best response thus far is the State of Demand Gen podcast, available on Apple and Spotify. Like I said, about 3,000 subscribers, marketers that are messaging me on LinkedIn DM that have said, "Hey, I've listened to your podcast for the past 3 months and I just got promoted to head of demand. I just got this I worked in manufacturing and a manufacturing company at a dead end marketing job, and I just got a great new opportunity in San Francisco with this tech company." And so, like, people are out there with the if you can take the information and you do something about it, you can get to where you want to go.
Yeah. So for those people, I don't know if this is going to show up. For those people that are actually watching, it's on my list. So if you can see my phone, it's on my list of podcast. I listen to it. Yeah, it's really good information, and I have nothing to do with demand gen, or maybe I do. I'm not sure yet. For everyone else listening, when Chris and I first got on this call, I talked to him about what we were going to do, how the process was going to go, and I send out a pretty simple PDF that just explains why we created this podcast, who it's for, who the customer audience is, and I give some questions. And I said, "Chris, did you take a look at that?" He goes, "No, I'm not going to take a look at it if you don't mind. I want to answer these things as soon as they're being thrown at me." So I believe him when he says how he stays sharp is putting himself through fire by getting questions real time, using data, using content to be able to drive that. I firmly believe that now as much as I do ever. Chris Walker, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for coming on the show. I look forward to getting a lot of feedback on this. I think we have pushed a couple of buttons that people are going to come at me or you and say, "Hey, wait a second. We are not going to give up that show. It's just not going to happen." But I look forward to them reaching out to you and to me and give you that feedback. So I appreciate your time. Thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me, Scott. Really appreciate being here. Hope everyone enjoyed it.
Awesome, man. I'm sure they did. Take care.
Take care.
You have been listening to another Talent Talks podcast. I hope this was useful. I think if you're in marketing, you've gotten a lot out of this. Today's guest, Chris Walker, has been really just bringing it. I think he brought a lot of heat to this call and a lot of information that can and should be used within the areas of marketing that we serve. Really enjoyed the call, and I think that we'll have to have him back sometime in the near future. If you haven't done it already, please go ahead and like this podcast wherever you're listening to it. Make sure you subscribe to it and reach out to me with any feedback that you have. Until next time, I'm Scott Rivers. You've listened to Talent Talks podcast with Chris Walker.